A new report by Sigla Research Center warns that influence operations continue to shape the 2025 midterm elections. The study found that rival elites, the Marcoses and the Dutertes, turned their online machines against each other after the 2022 alliance collapsed. The report also notes the rise of third-way voters, the spread of partisan news across social media, and the emerging use of generative AI in campaign strategies. Despite more active regulations, researchers say policies remain ineffective in curbing political influence operations. And to further discuss their report, we are joined by Ferdinand Sanchez II, researcher and head of public engagement at the Sigla Research Center. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining me on Morning Matters.
Hello, good morning po to everyone.
Good morning. Can you tell us briefly what this new Sigla Research report is about and what motivated you to do this study?
Yes, so the report examines yung evolution of influence operations in the 2025 midterm elections. So the broader term influence operations includes disinformation, fake news na kasama sa political communication strategies, hacking our attention, mobilizing people, and influencing electoral results. So dito, hinighlight namin yung three dimensions, yung personalities, platforms, and practices. We looked at yung breakdown ng Marcos Duterte Alliance, as you said, and pati na rin yung pag-document ng social media pages locally and also nationally. Pero partisan yung content nila, yung paggamit ng AI tools sa campaign materials. So although nakita natin na ganito siya, hindi lang part ito ng matagal ng ginagawa ng research center.
Okay, so one of the major findings po dito sa inyong research, I was reading about it, yung unit team alliance between the Marcos and Duterte camps, yung pag-collapse po noon, ano? So, paano, how did you do this research? How did this research shape the behavior of the entirety of the study?
Yes, so yung research namin, may methodology kami looking at around 193 Facebook pages, so from senators to local candidates. At the same time, we interviewed around 100 respondents in Lawag City, Cebu City, and Cotabato. And meron din kaming interview with volunteers of NAMFRAL. Ano ba yung mga issues or narratives na nakikita nila or nakikita na before and during the election? So yung main idea dito ay kung before nung 2022 parang nasa isang unit team, 'di ba, yung political blocks natin. Dito naman nagkaroon ng internal na parang targeting against each other. So against Marcos and also against Duterte, and we detailed, for example, narratives ng drug use accusations, imported justice, false victimhood, na all contextualized within yung timely issues tulad ng ICC warrant arrest, yung internal political infighting nila. So in a way, naging mas divided yung influencer networks, yung disinformation that we see online. So ang nangyayari either Duterte ally ka or Marcos supporter ka. But even with that split naman, I also want to mention na meron pa rin yung influence operations against liberal and progressive figures. So nakikita pa rin natin yung red tagging at the same time yung pag-discredit sa mga opposition politicians.
But you also mentioned dun sa inyong study yung imperfect alliances, at saka yung sinasabi nga growing space for third way electorates. Kasi ngayon, before, alam natin may mga opposition and administration, pero ngayon parang nagkakaroon na ng sino ba yung totoong opposition, sino ba yung totoong kaalyansa, maraming parang mga collaboration on the side. So what does this mean for the future of Philippine politics? Mas magulo ba or mas makikita na natin ngayon binary?
Definitely hindi na natin nakikita na binary siya. Pero yung kung magulo, mahirap i-qualify kung paano siya magiging magulo. Pero we are seeing that there's in a way merong third wave of third wave politics na bukod doon sa existing political blocks, people are looking at different modes of politics, and hindi lang siya yung mga perfect coalitions, pero signal siya na kailangan na mag-move beyond yung politicking. So nakikita natin even with the results na mas nag-orient yung citizens sa mga welfare or policy-centered na mga issues. So nakita natin how issues of yung kabuhayan, yung serbisyo at pamamahala, or yung peace and order or health, yun yung mga naging tampok para sa mga electorates natin. So this suggests a bit of a gradual shift toward issue-based politics na more than personality-driven rivalries, and towards to actually addressing yung needs ng mga tao rather than yung politicking and yung malalaking narratives na nag-aaway at yung parang malalaking concepts na kailangan ng mga tao ng concrete programs and welfare policies for them to actually vote.
It also noted po doon sa inyong report yung diversification of partisan news outlets. So how do these local or regional platforms influence voter perception compared to traditional or mainstream media?
Actually, medyo naging matagal na tong development, especially nung 2016, yung pag-brandized sa traditional and legacy media as biased and part ng oligarchy.
Oo.
But we are seeing now kasi, in this study, nag-try kami ng hyper-local approach. We really went to cities to actually see ano na ba yung information ecosystem nila. So actually, rather than seeing how these platforms shape yung perceptions, we think yung more important question ay um, how they edge yung ganitong mga community pages, at the same time yung mga nakikita nating alternative pages, how they edge out formal or traditional sources of information. So yung communities now increasingly rely on informal and non-journalistic sources for news and interpretation. So yung tanong kapag ganito, sila ba dapat yung sisihin sa boto nila or dapat
Oo,
din sila
oo.
tiisin yung compromised information ecosystem natin ngayon. So these platforms kasi thrive because of deeper democratic ills. So for example, yung political dynasties, localized violence, and polarization na naglilimit doon sa access nila to credible information, and at the same time weaken media institutions. So perhaps the challenge would be is reimagining what political education looks like in this kind of media landscape. At the same time, addressing bakit din ba bumababa yung kanilang trust towards traditional and mainstream media, and see ano ba yung nile-leverage ng mga local and regional platforms na to na hindi nagagawa ng mga traditional and national media that
Right.
we have.
Actually, it's a good point, kasi talagang until now, yan pa rin ang most common question kung sino ba dapat sisihin doon sa mga nagiging turnout ng mga binoboto natin. But sometimes doon nga din pumapasok yung kahalagahan ng voters education at the same time, diba? But moving on, nakita rin natin doon sa inyong study yung paggamit ng generative AI, no, sa mga political campaigning, 'di ba? Nakita natin yung lumawak siya, especially during the last election. So, can you share some examples of how AI was used, and ano ba, effective ba to or harmful ba to dun sa mga tactics na ginawa nila?
Yeah, so yung AI during election was used in so many ways. So meron ka ng very local to, yung meron ng campaign jingles na gumagamit ng AI, so para sa text to speech, meron kang posters, captions, and even full video. So the most viral example actually would be before the elections, nung nagkaroon ng AI generated na pulveron video used to discredit the Marcos claim. So we also have reports ng banned accounts sa ChatGPT na pro-Marcos content naman yung piniproduce. And we also see na meron ding red tagging deepfakes targeting progressive candidates like kabataan party list. So, una, mahirap sukatin yung exact quantitative impact. Pero malinaw na these AI-generated visuals amplify yung existing narratives that we already have. So, mas madali na ngayon gumawa ng content kaysa sa una, napakabilis when you try AI. Second, hindi mo na kailangan gumawa ng mga ebidensya or mag-twist ng mga fact. You just fabricate it. And lastly, sobrang visual and believable ng mga materials. So, while nakikita natin na sobrang creative on the outside, yung tactics nito actually blur accountability and actually normalize deception in political communication. So, while nakikita natin na very visual, effective siya, nakikita rin natin yung harms na nadudulot niya.
Right. So, yun nga, may usapin dito nung ethical di ba? Anong mga ethical standards or ethical frameworks na ano yung mga dapat natin gawin to prevent na ma-weaponize, di ba, in the future elections itong mga paggamit ng AI. I remember during the campaign season, ang COMELEC, no, ang Commission on Elections, parang meron silang parang tawag doon, parang vow, no, na parang aayusin nila or they will parang pagmamatyagan nila yung paggamit ng AI sa mga during the campaign. But what other safeguards or ethical framework should we establish para nga hindi maiwasan natin na magamit ito sa masamang paraan?
Yes, I think that's a very important question now. Actually, in our report, may kita nyo na in different sectors. So we have 3 key recommendations. One would be yung self-regulation of disinformation for hire, and also another one about AI use. So kada sector, we also tried na merong recommendation kami from government, civil society, media, and even yung social media platform. So in broad strokes, we need to shift the conversation around AI and elections toward accountability and transparency. So hindi lang siya tungkol sa regulation, kundi shared responsibility ng government, media platforms, and civil society. So for example, for government, kailangan ng AI literacy program sa schools, communities, and ng independent oversight para siguraduhin na transparent yung paggamit ng AI sa campaigns nila. For media, dapat clear yung labeling and dapat may disclosure kung AI-generated
AI
ba
ba
yung
to?
materials
Oo,
sila.
oo, oo.
Exactly. At mag-integrate din, perhaps, kapag 2028 na, no, AI literacy sa election coverage nila. Diba? So, magandang ma-integrate yon. And for example, sa platforms, kailangan na merong flagging systems at mechanisms para malaman kung third-party AI tools yung ginagamit nila. And for civil society, important na merong multi-stakeholder regulation because kailangan active din ang civil society sa pag-approach dito. And whole of society yung approach natin to resist yung very deceptive campaign practices ng paggamit ng AI. So in whole, no, yung goal natin is hindi lang entirely to regulate, pero mas gawing responsible and socially just yung paggamit ng AI para may accountability and transparency tayo every time na meron tayong elections.
Yung kaninang nabanggit ko po, sir, regarding Commission on Elections, yung kanilang inintroduce na new rules sa pag-monitor ng online campaigning, including pag-disclosure ng AI, na paggamit ng
Yes.
AI. Doon po sa inyong research, ito po bang ginawa ng Commission on Elections ay enough na yung kanilang regulations or may kulang pa? And if so, ano pa po yung nakikita nyo dapat ma-introduce pa?
Yeah, so we welcome, no, very much welcome yung COMELEC's new rules na especially yung registration of offline campaign pages, yung pag-require ng disclosure of AI use. Pero gaya nung nakita natin sa research at yung usapan din with other election monitors, kulang pa rin talaga sa enforcement. Human power, at the same time resources para talaga maisagawa ng maayos yung ganitong klase ng regulation. Right now, yung most responses actually still rely doon sa takedowns and moderation. Pero walang malinaw na mechanisms na pinuput out yung commission for accountability and punishment sa illicit ties ng candidates and influence operators. So kasama na dyan yung mga influencers. And nakikita natin globally, no, bumababa yung funding for counter disinformation program. Kaya mas mahirap yung ganitong regulation. So, ibig sabihin, kailangan talaga ng mas detailed na regulation and guidelines na magmula sa COMELEC, especially on transparency and accountability. So for example, yung nakita nga natin, diba, nagkaroon ng social media registration required to according to their memo to the politicians. Nakita natin na hindi to actually na-enforce. No, maraming nanalo and even until now, nalok-lok naman sila na hindi naman nag-register at all. At the same time, even if na mag-register sila, yung mga fake news disinformation ay nanggagaling din sa mga third-party pages and Facebook pages na mahirap talaga. So, we really need more accountability and more transparency na dapat yung mga politicians nagsasubmit ng kanilang mga ties doon sa ganitong mga networks. And kapag nakikita natin sila na interview sila sa mga influencer, ano yung kanilang mga negotiations or even yung kanilang mga conversations, kapag may mga ganun silang arrangement, kailangan na mas ma-disclose yun. And perhaps yun yung mag-i-increase din, no, ng trust ng mga tao, nakikita nila ano yung nangyayari at the same time, may accountability measures na meron yung government and naging hold accountable natin yung mga tumatakbo at yung mga maluluklok sa ating pamahalaan.
Now, sir, how can the public access the full report and how can they engage with Sigla Research Center or participate in your future studies?
Yes, so the full report is available at siglaresearch.org. So you can also find updates through the Sigla Research Facebook page. So we also invite everyone to join our ongoing campaign called Common Ground. So nag-hold kami ng campus dialogues on disinformation, AI, and democracy. So yung goal talaga namin ay hindi lang maglabas ng research but magbukas ng space for collaboration and reflection. And finally, we're also releasing a special report on AI and elections and a broader study on AI use in the Philippines. So follow our social, Sigla Research Center on Facebook, Instagram then. Hopefully you read and share our reports and watch out for our upcoming studies and events. So thank you so much.
Alright, maraming salamat po sa iyong oras, Ferdinand Sanchez II, researcher and head of public engagement at the Sigla Research Center.